Welcome back to the final installment of the Title Trinity series, the challenge where I am trying to push 3 separate paladins, each playing different specs, to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title in Season 3 of War Within. Now, at the time of recording this video, the title cutoff has ended and the M Plus push season has finished. The ending score required to obtain title ended at 39.12. So we now have a benchmark to look at as we go through this final 2 weeks of the push. This is going to be a big one. I played an absurd amount of M Plus over the last couple of weeks in an attempt to get this series done. Anyway, let's just get straight into it. I have listed on screen the scores from the previous episode. As you can see at the time, the Prot Paladin was still a fair chunk in front. It was about 50 points shy of the cutoff, the Ret Paladin dragging a little further behind, and the Holy Paladin very, very much lagging. So we'll keep these in mind and I will update the scores as we go through the keys that have happened over the last few weeks. To start us out, we're on the Holy Paladin. Now, if you recall from the last episode, I had an absolutely horrendous run in here where we basically had a guaranteed plus 20 timed and I just decided to int so hard on the last boss. Somehow, Zelt found it in his heart to bring me along again on the Holy Paladin. So let's see if we can actually redeem ourselves here. This run was already looking much cleaner all the way up through here. Couple of trickle deaths, but that's sort of to be expected in streets. It's a very forgiving timer. You can definitely afford to have the odd death here and there and not mean that the run is basically bricked. And by some absolute miracle, we don't int on the final boss. I pretty much told them to ping the square to go into because, like, my brain is not big enough to handle healing plus working out which portal to go through. But we now managed to get the second plus 20 ticked off on the Holy Paladin. Not a title key, although it is one of those, like, fringe case ones, so we're going to mark it yellow on the graph. And up next, we finally get a plus 19 priory ticked off on the Ret Paladin. I think I've attempted this key at least 15 to 20 times up until this one here. And in particular, we had probably 3 or 4 close runs with this exact same group of boys. So L, Fieldy, Shids, like we just could not get a run together in the past, but we did finally make it happen. So that is now resilient 19s on the Ret as well. And a pretty fast timer. This run was very clean. All of those whoopsies that seem to have plagued us in the past did not plague us this time. So we got this one done. We then rolled into a few attempts at a plus 20 Dawnbreaker. This was a resilient 20. I will spoil it. We didn't time this key. However, it was a no comms run and we did have quite a few runs that were looking quite solid. 20 Dawnbreaker, outside of Priory and Floodgate, is probably the next hardest key. The timer's very tight. The pulls are really hard on the tank and healer in particular. It's a rough key. So we do have a little bit of a montage of deaths, but it's sort of to be expected. The following day, now 2 weeks away from the title cutoff, we roll into a plus 20 resilient Floodgate. This is with Zelt and Cell are the 2 noteworthy guys. These players are insanely good, and Cell in particular was a massive help throughout the remaining 2 weeks of the season from here. So our first run, we actually got incredibly close. This comp is like a little bit scuffed. It's not exactly close to like what you would consider meta, but we do get to the last boss, I think pretty tight for time, but like definitely still doable. And unfortunately we fail the skip, which for anyone who's played in the last 12 months is a pretty normal and tragic thing to have happen. For the remainder of the next 3 hours, we did attempt this key quite a number of times more. We didn't have a run that got close to that. However, it was one of those sessions where each of the runs did look extremely promising. Like, we had quite a number of runs that were well on pace. We either would die to Mama or die to some packs early on. It's a very unforgiving key. A lot can go wrong in Floodgate, but still very promising. However, the next night, which was the day before reset, basically the final hours before the reset, Cell decided to run the key again. and he brought me along again. Different crew this time. Damastius is in here. Now, Dama is like one of the best OCE pushers by a long margin and just likes to play the game. So he came along and helped out, and we actually just one-banged it out of nowhere. Tight to time, but this is an enormous key. 20 Floodgate is very, very difficult. So we can quite comfortably pencil that off as a completed key. And it also then meant that my focus started to very much drift towards the Ret Paladin. It is behind the Prot Paladin. However, having 20 Floodgate done is probably more important than any score difference at the moment. On top of that, I also managed to get in to a plus 21 resilient gambit with Shorus, Raynons, and Kel. So these three boys are three of the players in one of the highest level push teams in the region, and they were kind enough to bring me along for a couple of attempts. For them, this is just homework, but I guess for me and anyone else who is like a fringe title player, this is very much a title key. Unfortunately, things do not go to plan. We had quite a number of attempts at this key. The run I'm showing on screen was the one that was the closest. Things just seemed to go wrong. I don't think it was necessarily anyone's fault. There would just be like some very unfortunate sort of occurrences that would mean that the key would get bricked. And the nail in the coffin was this run on screen. We are looking so good for time. We're in the final section, basically just a pack and the boss to go. And the caster in the background breaks out of its trap, casts without anyone noticing, and we all die. This, at the time, was very, very disheartening. This would have been yet another title key just ticked off on Ret, and it just kind of went down the gurgler. And unfortunately, Shorus, Raynons, and Kel had to go for their team key sesh, but we gave it a good whirl nonetheless. Next up, we jump into a plus 20 Halls of Atonement on the Ret Paladin. This was Pep's key. Resilient. Again, there's a fairly core theme towards the end of these seasons. Resilient key farming is like very, very much a thing, especially for players like myself who ended up sort of not in a fixed team towards the end of the season. We're just sort of like scrounging around picking up crumbs. Now, this group had a couple of good runs. We sort of reformed a couple of times, and in the end, we did manage to string a good run together. It was fairly tight to time, but having the plus 20 ticked off still is a big deal. I think this is one that we'll probably tentatively mark yellow. It's quite slow, so the key's probably going to need to be redone with a faster time, but we still get it ticked off. We didn't neglect the other characters fully, however, the Ret Paladin did become a very, very core focus of this push. It sort of became apparent as these weeks went on that I needed to start consolidating my attention into one character, otherwise there was a very real chance that I wasn't going to get title at all on any character. However, we still do keep playing the other tunes. This plus 20 Ecodome was a brick, and I do have the recording of the end of a run that did end up being really good. It's another plus 20 Gambit. Now, we already have Gambit done on the Holy Paladin, but this one was very fast. Now, take note of the tank. The tank's name is Jelly. Jelly is probably one of the nicest guys in the OC community by a long margin. He started Prot Paladin at the beginning of the patch and decided about 2 weeks ago that he wanted to push for title, but could not handle the Prot Paladin, which I can empathize with. That class is super hard to play. So, in the end, he ended up playing Prot Warrior, and I, fortunately, got to be a part of that push with him as well. This Gambit was really fast too. At the time of the recording of this, this was the fastest Gambit that I'd done at a plus 20 on any of my characters. So really, really cool, really clean run. Very weird comp, but we got it done, and we got it done very cleanly. And another Holy Paladin one on the list, a plus 19 Dawnbreaker. This run went really well, and as you can see, is a big score increase for the character as well, putting us up an extra 2 key levels and giving us a nice hefty little bit of score. Same can't be said for the Floodgate though. This is a recording of one of the number of attempts at 19 Floodgate that I made. is a very, very tough key. This one in particular is noteworthy because I did manage to keep up with all of the healing checks here. So the bricks of these 19 floodgates were definitely not the result of not being able to heal through the checks. They were just the key being extremely difficult, as you would expect. Now, really important here, and I'm going to give a massive shout out at the end, but I got a lot of support from a lot of different players in the OC community. In this group in particular, Stim playing the DK, ISO on the Hunter, Ship on the Warrior, and Kitsuno on the Resto Druid. These guys banded together around me to help me push towards title, because at this point in time, it looked very likely that I might not get it on any character. I know it's not a huge score gap. However, those last few points between title and like 100 points shy of it, that is an absolute chasm. It is such a large gap to bridge. This is a plus 20 error. Now, this run wasn't super duper quick. We had a couple of whoopsie moments at the end, but another plus 20 ticked off the list, and we're going to put it as yellow because I do think this key needed to be faster in the end, but still, it's a plus 20 ticked off the list. And then next up, the absolute giga gamer comp of Prot Paladin Resto. of Prot Paladin Resto Druid, Ret Paladin Mage Warrior in the Dawnbreaker. This was a Wednesday key. It was during the day down here, and it was basically just a random key that was thrown together for the sake of it. I will say, Suni is by far the best Prot Paladin I have ever seen. He is an incredible tank. Somehow makes what is objectively quite a squishy and difficult tank look easy. Funnily enough, this ragtag group that we've gotten together managed to pump out this key. So we finish off plus 20 Dawnbreaker. The Ret Pally all of a sudden leapfrogs the Prot Pally and is now sort of the best prospect that I've got for the remainder of the week. For reference, this was 1 week before the cutoff. This was the Wednesday or the first day of the final week. Now, with the cutoff looming around the corner, I made a decision which I, in hindsight, still think was the right move. You can see here, I'm in a plus 20 priory. If you look at the names, some of these players are absolute giga gamers who would not have popped up anywhere else otherwise. This run was a paid run from me. I paid to have access to this key. I know that it's a bit of a controversial topic, but with 1 week left of the season, I know there are players in the region who would sit down and sort of slog it out in a plus 20 priory with me. But with the amount of support that I was already getting, it's really even then a lot to ask of people. And having resilient 20s done would just make it so much easier for the rest of the week to try to fish for the 21s that I would need to finish off the series or finish off the Ret Paladin. So I had the gold lying around in the midst of pushing. I am very, very much a gold farmer. I like to run like old dungeons for transmog and things like that. So I had a bit of a war chest. I know it goes against the rules of the series, but I think this is just a good sort of like learning experience for both me as well as others, that if you're not playing in a push group, these keys are extraordinarily difficult to get done. You either need a group of really good friends who are willing to slog it out with you, or you need to chance your arm in LFG. I would hazard a guess that there would probably be like less than 10 random plus 20s that have been timed in LFG this season. I watched Decalon's stream run plus 20 Priory Resilient for an entire week. Maybe had a couple of runs that looked half decent, like they were going to get timed. So it still took us a few hours. At this level, when you're paying for access to keys, a carry isn't the same thing as AFKing at the door like you would expect in the past. You really do have to pull your weight. There's no like ifs or buts about it. So it took us quite a number of attempts, but after a couple of hours, we did manage to knock off the resilient 20s. I know it breaks the rules of the series, but we sort of got to do what we got to do. And I will talk a bit more about it later on in the video. I don't want to have to resort to this in the future, but we did this patch. So moving on from that though, we have the same crew from earlier in the same dungeon as before. This one in particular, we were looking to get a faster timer. Now, with the comp that we're playing here, I had to play some very awkward builds as Ret. I effectively had to run a full single target build, which sounds really, really bizarre, but the bottleneck for the timer in a lot of these keys is actually how long the mini bosses and the bosses live. So while my overall suffers a little bit, the timer is quicker. So we do get a couple of crumbs out of this, and then this key can be marked as green, because I think this is a perfectly safe title key. We do have a crack then at the 21 streets. This would be a very, very lock-in title key. If we were to get it at this point, I would be feeling very comfortable. However, it was not to be. I think with streets, if you can get past the first room cleanly, you're probably home free. That is probably the hardest part of the key. So unfortunate, but with 5 days left of the season, there's still time. Once again, the same crew into a plus 20 hauls. The only difference here is that Ice Frog, who is playing the Resto Druid, was also a massive support throughout this whole final week. He and his push group finished up a few weeks prior, and he basically put his hand up to support anyone within the OCE group to help get their title. Massive thanks to him as well. I will give a proper thanks to everyone at the end, but I just wanted to note his hard work as well. This one, once again, few more crumbs. We get one score out of this, and I think that this can now be marked as green. It is probably just fast enough to be considered a title key, and we can lock that one in. Plus 20 streets now. This is a funny one. I think 21 streets is arguably a required title key, but it's not 100% needed. So we rolled back into the streets just purely to get a faster timer, on the off chance that my end title score didn't include a streets. So this one was very fast. So we got quite a few crumbs out of this. I tentatively am going to mark it as green because it is good enough for a title key, but a lot depends on the other keys that we get in the meantime. Same again here in the Dawnbreaker, looking for crumbs. We are crumb hunting once again. We've got Jelly back on the Prot Warrior, Equi coming along on the Hunter. If you'll notice, ISO and Stim were a huge sort of core part of my support network throughout this final week, but a lot of the other guys from the community chipped in to sort of help with the key push as well. In this one, now Dawnbreaker is a really tricky key to get a faster time with a comp like this. We get a +1 out of it. It's objectively not the fastest timer in the world. However, it's probably now, I would say, just good enough. So this one gets a green. And then following this, we get the pleasure of rolling in to a +21 Gambit. Now, I didn't stream this run. This one was just recorded through OBS, so I only get the final moments of the key. However, it went very smoothly, a couple of deaths, but Gambit is a very forgiving key, all in all. And we polish this off. We get one of the 21s out of the way. The timer's not amazing, but it's okay. We end this dungeon with a score of 3,911. At this point, I was actually feeling quite safe. However, you will see on the graphic that 3912 was the ending cutoff score. I was 1 point short at this point. Now, this key happened with about 36 hours left of the season, so I went to bed that night feeling pretty comfortable, and the reason I felt comfortable is the cutoff at that point in time was 3,900. So we were 11 points clear. And then out of nowhere, the following day while I was at work, I was checking my phone over and over and over. The score kept going up and up and up. It was insane. It was I would check every hour and it was a point higher. The cutoff score went from 3,900 to 3,908 over the course of 10 hours. So my score, which at the time looked pretty good, it wasn't I was super duper far in front of it, but it turned from, yeah, I'm probably good for title on the Ret. I can play Prot and Holy for the next couple of days, or for the next day and a half, I suppose. Went from, uh-oh, I need more score. Where am I going to get it? So I come home from work. This is now the day before cutoff. We have a couple of plus 21 streets to have a crack at. The first one, no bueno. Again, first room woes, very difficult. Between the fact that the interrogation can pick the wrong person, or that the weapons proc from the boss can one-shot someone if they don't have a defensive rolling, it does not go well. And our second one also doesn't go well. So this would have made my life well easier if we did manage to just tick this off now, and I could kick back, focus on, the other characters for a bit, maybe help out if a Ret Paladin can even help anyone out, but but anyway, the stress starts to rise. The stress starts to rise a lot at this point. I then play from basically the time that I got home consistently throughout that entire evening. I was trying to get into any key that I could even remotely get close to. This run, very strange comp, but once again, watch Suni here tank. This guy, this is a pull that I would watch a Prot warrior do and think, uh-oh, this looks very, very dangerous. And he just makes it look easy. I don't know what this guy does. He is actually insane at Prot Paladin. But unfortunately, the run didn't result in crumbs. We then, though, take that key and go into a plus 21 streets for the fourth time. This comp is very, very scuffed. However, I think if there's ever a comp where you're going to run double Fury Warrior, Streets is probably it. I thought that this would just be an amazing way to finish off the series. I was very, very hyped on stream. I was really, really focusing quite hard. It was not to be. We were too slow killing the boss, and we got this horrendous overlap here where we got yoinked in on top of the circle and just die. So very, very sad. And I then spend the next 4 hours sitting in queue, just waiting for people to potentially sign up to my key. We were in dire straits here. I, at this point in time, was very well considering taking the day off work the next day. I was pretty much going to stay up until the wee hours of the morning attempting to get over the line, because while at the time we didn't know what the final cutoff score was going to be, it was very, very clear that 3,911 was not safe, nowhere near safe. Now, this didn't result in anything on that evening. I stayed up, I waited in LFG. The score was rocketing, but there was no one out there doing keys, so I think most people were indisposed and basically just doing either keys with their friends or paid carries were going on as well. And at nearly 1 a.m. in the morning, tired, very much just hunting for any scraps that I can possibly get, the OC community comes through once again. Muzz, Dammer, and Cell, who have all been around and supported throughout this whole process at one point or another, come through with a last-minute plus 21 streets. The fifth time we have attempted it, and we then finish this one. No deaths, all cruisy. Ret Pally damage is absolutely terrible, but in fairness to myself, Muzz and Dammer are probably two of the best players of their respective classes in the world, so the competition is quite high. And we finish off with a score of 3,923 and are officially safe for title on the Ret Paladin with less than 12 hours to go. And that basically concluded the push. I would have loved to have gotten one character safe and then really, really tried to push the other two as close to the cutoff as possible. I did have that following day after work at the very least where I could have played, but I was running on about 3 hours sleep from the night before. I was knackered. There was really not a huge need for a paladin to be coming along anyway. I did get asked, but I uninstalled my weak auras. I basically hung up the cap, so to speak. I don't even know how good I would have gone on Ret Paladin with 3 hours sleep and no weak auras anyway, but the final tally is on screen. The title Trinity series was, I guess, objectively not a success in the sense that we didn't meet our goals, and we even had to cut corners to get one title over the line. However, I enjoyed this a hell of a lot. I think back to the original video 6 months ago. Wow, 6 months ago. And I'd never even touched Holy Paladin. I remember making like part of the video of me basically like chalking a 12 on Holy because I didn't know how to heal. So it has been a really, really fun journey, but it has taught me a lot of valuable lessons as well. Before we go into that though, I want to say an enormous thank you to all of the OC community who helped me with this final couple of weeks push. Without them, I would not have even gotten within striking distance of title. We've got Stim, ISO, Ship, Kitsuno, Ice Frog, Muzz, Dammer, Cell, Suni. The list of names just goes on. Shields, Jelly, Pep. I really, really would feel bad if I missed anyone. And then obviously also like the boys that I played with originally. Yeah, our push team sort of fell apart because like I was a moron and decided to go with off meta picks. But I wasn't the only one, you know, like Fred did the same thing, but like Fred, Vod, Adam, Shock for coming along, even though like he was pushing keys with his NA team, for still coming along to support us as well. Drabsy, so many other people that like really, really deserve a mention as well. Lan, who I'd never even spoke to on Discord, but ran so many keys with me throughout the patch. Para, Necro, like Gel. I think like apologies, Gel, because Gel should be well higher up the list. This isn't a list or an ordered list of all of the people I should thank, but there's just so many people that I could pluck out. I just want to say that if I've learnt anything, it is that building connections with people in-game is the most important thing and the most rewarding thing as well. I didn't like that I had to rely on others to help me get over the line for title, but the fact that those people were there fills me with an immense amount of gratitude and warmth and all of that stuff. Without them, it would not have been possible. I apologize if I've missed any names. If you put yourself in the comments and say, "Oi, where's my name?" and it was one of you guys, then like I'll pin the comment. I'll have a pinned comment with thanks that I might have missed, but all of the OC boys are incredible and I could not have got over the line without them. But what have I learnt from this whole experience? Well, I have been a fringe title player for the entirety of War Within. All of the titles that I've gotten have been either very, very close to the mark, as in like I've only just snuck over the line, or have been like this patch where I've required some support from players who have already done all the hard yards elsewhere and are then just like lifting me up by my bootstraps. Going into Midnight, I have a new goal. The OC boys all did this, but Stim and ISO in particular were just the goats. And it wasn't just me. They helped everyone. And this is a regular occurrence for them as well. They do this every season, more or less. I want to do that next season. We are going to have another push series in Midnight, but it is going to be different. The push series next patch is going to be trying to push past title. We are going to have a fixed, coordinated group playing a respectable comp with the objective not of just getting title, but pushing past title and then helping every single person that I can to then get it themselves. That's what I've learned. I've learned that your comp matters a lot. Not that the meta matters a lot. I rip on the meta and I still will, but your comp matters a lot. Playing in a fixed group matters a lot. And having friends matters a lot. Next patch, we are going to document the journey of pushing to title, beyond title, and then helping as many people that I can possibly get my hands on to get over the line for title in the same way that everyone has supported me to do the same this patch. I have done plenty of receiving this expansion, and I'm very grateful for it. I think it is time for me to pull up my bootstraps, improve even more at the game, and then give back to the community that gave so much to me. And with that out of the way, that is the conclusion of the Title Trinity series. Thank you for everyone who tuned in for the entire patch. I had a lot of fun making this series. It has been very, very enjoyable, and I've learnt a lot about myself as a player and a lot of lessons to use going forward. If you want to see the series for next patch, next expansion, when it comes out, drop a like and a sub. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, gamers, take care.